Bright mall lights couldn't hide former captain Eva's hidden scars. Watching her son play, she desperately clung to fragile peace. She never expected a petty security chief would shatter it, dragging her military past into the present. The rest of the scene unfolded around this quiet tension. Eva Rostova watched her 7-year-old son, Leo, his laughter echoing faintly from the designated play area, a splash of vibrant color against the polished marble floors. This upscale shopping center, with its gleaming storefronts and hushed conversations, felt worlds away from the dust and urgency that had once defined her life as an army captain. Eva consciously sought these pockets of normalcy, moments where the slight, persistent ache in her leg was just background noise, not a constant reminder of service. She leaned back on the bench, the cool metal a stark contrast to the warmth of Leo's distant giggles. This fragile piece was a fortress she built daily. But even fortresses have vulnerable gates, and one was about to be stormed by the unexpected arrival of a man in a crisp, authoritative uniform, patrolling his perceived domain with an air of unchallenged importance. The quiet hum of commerce was about to yield to conflict. Security Chief Miller approached the play area, his posture rigid, eyes scanning like radar seeking imperfections. His uniform was immaculate, his shoes gleaming, a walking embodiment of sterile order. He wasn't patrolling. He was surveying, his gaze lingering dismissively on Eva before settling on Leo, who was enthusiastically, perhaps a bit loudly, navigating a climbing structure. Miller stopped near the low gate, his presence casting an immediate chill. "Ma'am," his voice cut through the air, polite but lacking warmth, "could you please keep your son's noise level down? This is a high-end establishment." Eva straightened, her brief moment of relaxation evaporating. "He's just playing, officer," she replied calmly, though a familiar tension tightened her shoulders. "He's in the designated children's area." Miller's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. He took a step closer. "Designated, yes, but we expect a certain decorum. His exuberance is disturbing other patrons." He gestured vaguely towards a sparsely populated seating area nearby. His tone implied Leo, and by extension Eva, didn't quite fit the desired clientele profile. It wasn't overt aggression, but a condescending dismissal, a subtle questioning of their right to occupy the space comfortably. "Perhaps," Miller added, his gaze sweeping over Eva's practical attire, "if it cannot play more quietly, this isn't the appropriate venue." The first stone had been cast, disrupting the fragile peace. Eva stood up, the slight ache in her leg sharpening as she moved protectively closer to the play area gate. "He's a child," she stated, her voice low but firm, imbued with quiet authority she rarely used now. "In a play area. He's not disturbing anyone." Miller scoffed, a smirk playing on his lips. "My job is to maintain the atmosphere here, ma'am. Some people come here for peace and quiet, not this." He waved a dismissive hand towards Leo. The implication was clear. People like you, anger hot and familiar, surged in Eva, but years of discipline kept it leashed. "Your job is security, not dictating how children laugh," she countered, her gaze steady. The confrontation began drawing quiet attention. Shoppers slowed, conversations paused. A few phones subtly lifted, screens angled toward them. Miller seemed emboldened by the audience, puffing out his chest slightly. "Maybe you don't understand the rules of a place like this," he sneered, his eyes flicking down to her leg and back up, a flicker of disdain in his gaze. That flick, that targeted glance, snapped something in Eva. "I understand rules perfectly," she said, her voice ringing with sudden clarity. "Former Captain Eva Rostova, United States Army. I know chain of command, and I know harassment when I see it." The reveal hung in the air. Instead of backing down, Miller's face hardened, a strange light in his eyes, perhaps the thrill of challenging perceived authority. "Military? Doesn't give you special privileges here," he spat back. The tension ratcheted up, thick and suffocating. Eva felt trapped, her past and present colliding under the weight of judgmental eyes. Across the wide corridor, seated at a small table outside a coffee shop, Marcus Thorne watched the scene unfold. Retired Sergeant Major Thorne, formerly the Green Berets, had an uncanny ability to read situations, honed over decades of navigating far more dangerous environments than a suburban mall. He'd noticed the woman earlier. Her posture, the way she scanned her surroundings, even while seemingly relaxed, the subtle stiffness in her gait. Veteran recognizing veteran. Now, he saw the familiar signs of a bully drunk on petty power, cornering someone trying desperately to remain calm. The security chief's condescending tone, the woman's squared shoulders, the child's suddenly muted play. It painted a clear picture. Thorne had been enjoying a rare quiet afternoon, but the ingrained instinct to protect, to stand with fellow soldier, kicked in. He deliberately placed his cup down, the ceramic clicking softly against the saucer. He rose, his movements economical and precise, a quiet force moving to the oblivious flow of shoppers. He wasn't large like a bodyguard, but his presence carried an undeniable weight, a calm intensity that seemed to precede him. He didn't hurry, but every step towards the escalating confrontation was measured and purposeful. The tide was about to turn. Thorne reached the periphery of the small crowd just as Miller was leaning in towards Eva, his voice rising. "That's enough." Thorne's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the tension like a perfectly thrown knife. Miller startled, turning to face the newcomer, irritation flashing across his features. "Stay out of this, sir. This is official mall security business." Thorne took another calm step forward, placing himself subtly between Miller and Eva, creating a physical buffer. His gaze, steady and penetrating, met Miller's. "Your business appears to be harassing this lady and her son," Thorne stated, his tone even but carrying an authority that had nothing to do with a mall uniform. "I suggest you stand down." Miller bristled, trying to reassert control. "I'm the security chief here. I decide what—" Thorne interrupted, not by raising his voice, but by lowering it slightly, making Miller strain to hear. "And your conduct is unprofessional and bordering on abusive." He glanced briefly at Eva, a quick, almost imperceptible nod passing between them, a silent acknowledgement of shared service, of understanding. Eva's shoulders relaxed fractionally. This woman identified herself as a former army captain. Thorne continued, his eyes locked on Miller. "Is this how this establishment treats its veterans? Or any parent trying to give their child a moment of joy?" He wasn't accusing, merely stating facts, but the questions hung heavy in the air. Miller, flustered by the unexpected, articulate challenge in Thorne's unyielding presence, opened and closed his mouth, searching for retort that didn't come. The power dynamic had decisively shifted. Humiliation and anger warred on Miller's face. Robbed of his verbal dominance, he resorted to a cruder tactic. He took an aggressive step towards Thorne, raising a hand as if to push him back. "You have no authority here," he sputtered. Before Miller's hand could make contact, Thorne moved with fluid precision. It wasn't a strike or a block in the traditional sense. Thorne simply shifted his weight, used Miller's own momentum against him, and guided the offending arm harmlessly aside with a firm, brief grip on the wrist, released almost instantly. The entire motion was smooth, controlled, and over in a second, leaving Miller slightly off balance and stunned. "Don't," Thorne advised, his voice still level, utterly devoid of threat, but heavy with implication. The brief physical contact, the effortless control, spoke volumes more than any shout could. Just then, two more uniformed mall guards arrived, drawn by the commotion, along with a man in a suit, likely mall management. They looked uncertainly between their chief, Thorne, and the surrounding onlookers, many still recording. Thorne calmly turned to the manager. "This security chief," he began, his voice clear and concise, "was harassing this woman and her child, escalating the situation without cause. His behavior was unprofessional and targeted." Several bystanders immediately chimed in. "He's right. We saw it." The chief was way out of line. She just told him her son was playing. Miller started protest, but the manager held up a hand, his expression grim as he took in the scene and the murmuring crowd. The manager, Mr. Henderson, acted swiftly, ushering Eva, Leo, Thorne, and a still fuming Miller away from the public eye into a quiet side office. The other guards secured the area, politely collecting contact information from willing witnesses. Inside the sterile office, Henderson listened patiently. Eva recounted the incident, her voice regaining its steadiness. Thorne providing calm, factual corroboration. Henderson then reviewed footage, not just from bystander phones, but also the mall's own overhead security cameras. The video was undeniable. It showed Miller's target approach, his aggressive posture, Eva's attempts to de-escalate, her clear statement of identity, Miller's dismissive reaction, and finally, his attempted physical contact with Thorne. Miller tried to justify his actions, maintaining standards, misunderstanding, but his defense crumbled against the visual evidence and consistent testimonies. Henderson's face grew increasingly stern. After a brief, tense silence, he turned to Miller. "Mr. Miller," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument, "your conduct was completely unacceptable. It violated mall policy, demonstrated a profound lack of judgment, and frankly, has damaged this establishment's reputation. Your employment here is terminated, effective immediately." Relief washed over Eva's face, not triumph, but the quiet release of a heavy burden. Justice, in this small arena, had been served. The videos, inevitably, surfaced online. But the narrative quickly shifted from simple mall drama to a broader conversation about respect for veterans and the subtle ways prejudice can manifest. Hashtags like #RespectOurVets and #StandWithEva gained traction. Eva found herself receiving messages of support, many from fellow veterans and military families sharing similar experiences of feeling overlooked or misunderstood in civilian life. Local veteran support groups reached out, offering resources and solidarity. Thorne remained a quiet pillar of support. He visited Eva and Leo a few days later, not as an intervener, but as a friend. He knelt down and presented Leo with a military challenge coin, its surface cool and heavy. "This is for bravery, young man," Thorne said seriously. "You stayed strong when things got tough." Leo clutched the coin, his eyes wide with awe. Slowly, the anxiety that had clung to Eva and Leo began to recede. Leo's laughter in the park sounded less fragile, more free. Eva found herself walking a little taller, the fortress walls around her piece starting to lower, replaced by a growing sense of community and resilience. The incident had left scars, but it also illuminated unexpected pathways to healing and connection. In the weeks that followed, Eva discovered a new voice within herself. Initially hesitant, she began sharing her story at a local veterans outreach center, finding strength in connecting with others who understood. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about advocating for mutual respect and understanding between military and civilian communities. Leo, clutching his challenge coin, learned that bravery wasn't about not being scared, but about standing up anyway, and that sometimes quiet strength speaks loudest. The mall management, facing public scrutiny, implemented new sensitivity training for their staff, specifically addressing interactions with veterans and customers with diverse backgrounds. Change often starts small. For Eva and Leo, life found a new, more empowered rhythm. The memory of that day remained, not as a source of fear, but as a catalyst. It was a reminder that standing up matters, that empathy is a strength, and that even in the polished corridors of a shopping mall, courage could bloom unexpectedly. Their path forward was clearer, forged in adversity, guided by newfound purpose. What are your thoughts on how we treat our veterans and their families in everyday life? Have you witnessed or experienced something similar? Share your perspective in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give a thumbs up, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that make you think.